Hello, good evening, and welcome to this very special edition of our program. Tonight, we are going to get into the book that has been published by Dr. Nyaho Nyaho-Tamakloe with assistance from Felix Odate-Wellington, Dr. Felix Odate-Wellington, I should say. The book was launched last week and is entitled Never Say Die. It's the autobiography of a Ghanaian statesman, and you should get it. You will notice that there's been some commentary on it on the radio. Nyaho talks about election 2012 in the book and his views about why certain things happened, particularly in the Greater Accra region, to his beloved MPP. We will explore that as well. Nyaho also talks about a whole history of his life in politics, in sports, and in medical practice. Some of the heroic events that he conducted as a medical officer, delivering babies at dawn, and etc., are in the book that we'll talk about. He also talks about his beloved Accra Hearts of Folk, and in fact, he gives a title that sort of follows the Hearts of Folk tagline, Never Say Die. And he talks about how the Hearts of Folk team lifted up his spirit in prison when they came to Nsawam and played football just to support him. And he promised that when he's released, he will stick with Hearts of Folk forever. And he has done exactly that until this day. He also talks about his involvement in a coup d'etat. The younger Ghanaians cannot relate to what a coup d'etat is or how it used to be or the form that it used to take. But those above the age of 30 perhaps will remember those days when our parents listened to the radio in awe of another coup announcement. Those days are long gone, and I believe that they are gone actually forever. So in this program, we'll be exploring all of these matters that Dr. Nyaho Tamakloe has raised in his book, and he has welcomed us graciously to his home to have this conversation with us. Doc, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Are you unnerved by the responses that you're getting from the book? I was at the launch and it was a fantastic launch. But of course, you know, it's a book with a lot of controversy and a lot of information that hitherto was not known. So you will expect commentators to start talking and some writing about what you have written. Are you prepared for that kind of interrogation?
I think the first thing I would say is that I would advise each and every one who would like to react to what a newspaper has picked up, to read the book first. To me, that's the most important thing. And now, I have been told about comments that have been made by one particular paper. I didn't write the book for any particular paper. And if somebody decides to pick just an expert of the book and then use it in his newspaper, that has nothing to do with me. But once again, I would like anyone who disagrees with anything that I've said in that book to come to me directly. I have not in any way at all attacked anybody in that book. Anything that I have said in that book is very factual as far as I'm concerned, and I will ever stand to defend it.
You call the book Never Say Die. That's the tagline of Accra Hearts of Folk.
Yeah.
What do you mean by Never Say Die?
But if you read the book carefully, and I believe you have covered it, you can see that all along has been resilience. I fall down, get up, and keep on going. So to me, Hearts of Folk Battle Cry is the right title for this book. Hence the Never Say Die.
I read also your family history in the book, and it's a funny question, but are you Ga or are you Eve?
I'm a Ghanaian.
Yes, that's correct. But
I am a Ghanaian. You'll be surprised when I was in the military. We have forms that we fill. And when they write tribe, I write Ghana. Yes.
I see.
Even when you go to a hospital and I see a folder, they write tribe there, I cancel it. If it comes to me. I am a Ghanaian.
you think we should design a policy to reduce the identification by tribe of our people?
I think that is very necessary, and it is very, very important, considering what we are going through now, when ethnicity is trying to creep into our politics. It is important.
Has ethnicity not always been part of our politics?
I won't say so. I won't say so. Yes, there have been slight elements of years back, but it appears to be raising its ugly head recently.
We'll come to some evidence of ethnicity raising its ugly head, and you are preaching a sort of a reduction in partisan approach to national development, which coming from you is very interesting, because I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, and by the time we got accustomed to politics and we got accustomed to the big names in politics, one of which was Nyaho Tamakloe. My first encounter with you is something you may never remember, but you had come with Mr. Kwame Pianim to Dade Kutupon to campaign for him. It was a very small group, and we were all excited to see Dr. Nyaho Tamakloe. And you drew out a lot of awe and a lot of fear in young people. And then you had the first boom speech in recent politics when you talked about this country was going to burn. Has that Nyaho Tamakloe transformed to a different Nyaho Tamakloe who is writing Never Say Die? Because we saw you on television and you talked about, if Rawlings does XYZ, this country was going to burn. The NDC applied that in their campaign against you and against the MPP, and you were thought to be a firebrand. Have you changed?
Well, that particular statement was made about 20 years ago, if not more. It was after the 1992 general elections, in which we were robbed. So we had a rally, a big rally, NPP rally in Tema. There were quite a number of leaders who spoke at that rally. If I probably will try to recollect, Peter Lajite spoke, Odwesai spoke, Aram Ponsan spoke, Dubois Ahene spoke, I think Nanado spoke, and I spoke. And then in that particular speech that I made, the speech was very conditional. And if my memory could serve me right, I said I was sending this message to Jerry John Rawlings through the members of the Council of State, the chiefs and the elders in this society, and indeed those elders who have been sitting on the fence, that if we are robbed in the 1996 elections, there will be fire. So it's a conditional statement.
Yes, it was.
Okay. I remember very well after that statement, Tommy Thompson invited me and said, look, I listened to the tape carefully, and you spoke like a politician. Thank you. Now, in life, when you keep on adding a year or two to your years, you gather a lot of experience. So that vibrancy you might have started with will start going down. So if you read certain parts of this book, you see that my tone has changed a lot. And it's because of the various experiences that I picked all these years, that now I'm making use of them carefully in life.
So if I want to enter politics today and I want advice from you, would you say that I should be the Nyaho Tamakloe of 20 years ago, or I should be the Nyaho Tamakloe of today?
No, firstly, I think I would say be yourself. That's what I would say first. Be yourself, Paul Adom-Otchere.
Should I be firebrand? Should I be reconciliatory?
No, it's not a question. Is it in politics? For instance, I was told this morning that people have reacted to what I said. I have not said anything. I wrote something, And the newspaper journalist picked it up and he decided to use it. I didn't even know about it until somebody called me and told me. If the person who reacted had read the book, he wouldn't have made the statements he made. Did you follow me?
Yes.
Yes. Because if you read this book carefully, I didn't spare anyone, both NDC and PP.
You didn't spare them?
I didn't spare anyone.
You dealt with them?
I dealt with them. The way I found you, that was the way I wrote. So people should not think it's all about NPP affair. I have seriously treated the NDC. And if you go into the book, you see it. I don't care what happens. There is no one who knows the MPP better than I do. Those who started BJ Darusha, where is it today? But in life, at a certain stage, you have to climb up. We have seniors in the party. Odwe Size is there. Alajete has gone away. So if somebody, as a result of a newspaper publication, says I'm not an MPP man, the person himself doesn't know what he's talking about. No one is more NPP than me. I know what I'm talking about.
No one?
No one. I'm telling you.
Not even
I was
Mr.
there
Kufuor.
when the party was formed.
Not even Mr. Kufuor?
Kufuor cannot be more MPP than me. Kufuor can be more of MPP tradition than me. But he can't be more MPP than me. I was there. Indeed, when we were forming the party, at a certain stage, it's in the book. I have to defend Kufuor in Kumasi and some of our meetings. Not just myself alone. Dr. Charles Freku Brobe, there's some more brothers. We moved all the way to Kumasi just to defend Kufuor when he was being attacked by his own people. You follow me? That he is not giving Edubo Ahini the opportunity to run again. So let no one be deceived that he or she in that party can stand higher than me.
The 1 hour interview will not allow us to cover all of this book. So after the break, we will do 3 things. We'll look at football. We would look at politics broadly, where we'd like to pick up on the things you wrote about 2012 elections and 2008 elections. We'll talk about you and coup d'etat in prison and out of prison. And we'll talk about football, where we'll talk about Accra Hearts of Oak with you and Sawam, and of course the famous musical youth that you initiated at Accra Hearts of Oak, which was the youth development of our football. And another epochal thing that you did in our football that many people might not know is that the present constitution of the Football Association, the way it is, was all initiated by you. So we'll talk about football, politics, prison, and coup d'etat after the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, and I'm sure that you are anticipating a very good conversation, and we hope that it will turn out that way. Dr. Tamakloe, thank you for your time again. Let me ask about your co-author, Dr. Felix Odate Wellington, whom I know well, and who was with us until he left to Canada to study. He was an important part of the election 2000 when he was arrested for describing President Rawlings as a con man. In the lead up to the election, and a lot of politics was created around that. He's your co-author. Where's the connection? Why is he your co-author?
That's an interesting question. Once again, if you have read the book, the preface, he stated that clearly. I've known Felix when he was at the age of 5, 6. I was there on duty at 37 Military Hospital as a doctor on duty. And then he was brought in there by the parents. His father was then, I think he was a full colonel then. And then they brought this small little boy to me with a medical condition. When I finished with him, I was going to walk the colonel into his car, you know. And he started laughing. He said, "Nyaho, bugün bir ne babe na mi, ami wuwa. Shika miliono ni gbomo echon mi ne gesha he ne she. Me ne me brofo we ni. Blofo were for that General Date Wellington saying this.
What does that mean?
That the kids of today haven't got strong bones. If they were to go through what their fathers or mothers have gone through, they would have perished long ago. They are just European fowls.
Wow.
Whose bones can easily be broken. That's what the old man said. You follow me? So I've known Neil and Ted very, very well for years. Now, when the father was in government, ironically, that was the time I was arrested. Oh, yes. I was very close to the father still. He used to invite, I was then in the 1st Infantry Battalion, Michel Camp. And when he needs me, he will send his driver to come and pick me. And then we drive straight to the Ministry of Health. In those days, he was a health commissioner. So one day I went down there, and then he pulled his drawer and he showed a medical card to me. That it's a patient who has been seen by a doctor. When I read the card, it didn't make sense to me, especially when it came to treatment. Not knowing the card has been brought to him all the way from Takoradi by a soldier. So I said, sir, the medication is a bit funny. So yes, if you know General Wellington, he speaks with sort of.
I never met him.
Yeah. Oh, you never met him?
No,
Oh.
I didn't.
I said, yes, yes. Then immediately, he called his principal secretary. That's what we used to call them in those days. Now he's what, chief director.
Yes.
I said, yes, sit down. Sit down. Have you met doctor before? He said, no. And that was late Mr. Francois, whose brother was also, no, Bouzulaine. I'm sorry. I'm glad I corrected myself. Bouzulaine.
The soldier?
No. He had a brother who was an Air
colonel.
Force
Captain?
No, he was, Bouzulaine became, I think, an Air Vice Marshal or so. He was, I think, deputy to Ashley Larson in those days. Bouzulaine also had a look. Of course, he wasn't a doctor. And then Odate, typical Odate, he wanted to take action immediately. So he asked the chief director to have the man immediately suspended. In fact, sacked. He used the word sacked. He must be sacked immediately. I said, also, I think we have to find out what had happened. According to what the chief director said, the person is a doctor. He happened to be a female doctor who was very good, trained in Britain. When we went into it, what came out was that the woman had a slight mental problem, which had been coming on and off.
This doctor or the patient?
This doctor.
Oh, wow.
So later, when we had a feedback, that's typical General Wellington. He changed his decision, and the woman was moved to, I think, an area where she will not come in contact with day in and day out patients.
So you have had a relationship with Felix's family, Dr. Odate Wallace's family?
Long ago. Now, when Felix's father died, when he was killed, that's typical Ghana. Nobody wanted to get close to them again. If you know Felix well, he might probably have told you that. And indeed, the whole of his briefcase, the old man's briefcase was stolen. In the briefcase were the passports of his children and their wife. All went. So this lady came to me. She came together with one of her daughters who is in Britain now, Abibi. I was in Nyaho clinic, and I treated her for a medical condition. But I think when she was leaving, she was not really cheerful as I expected her to be. So the doctor told her, tell doctor everything. And that everything was a passport that has got missing. She's reported to the police several times, and nobody seemed to care. That's okay. Go and get the police report and make it official. Get new forms to complete, which they did, and they brought it to me, and I got them a passport.
Oh, I see.
You follow me?
Yeah.
I remember by then I was traveling to the US, and Abibi was telling me, but Abibi was in this country. By then, Nilante, I think he was in secondary school. So I came back and got them the passports. 5 of them. So I've known them for years. So you can see, apart from the fact that this book is really geared towards the youth, because of my connection with Nilante, there are a lot of, brilliant people in Ghana, but I decided to write this book with him. But he knows me, I know him, and he's a very, very dependable person. So that's the reason.
I see. That's interesting. Let's talk now about the coup d'etat. You wanted to stage a coup in the 70s to overthrow General Achampong. You were caught and jailed. Were you convicted?
We were not even tried.
Why did you want to overthrow the Achampong government?
Achampong government, when Achampong came to power, I was in the country. But I think his government was saddled with a lot of problems. There were a series of coup d'etats, attempts. And one thing I must say for Achampong is that he never killed anybody. Unfortunately, he died that way. Kutu really wasn't a politician at all. But he had no idea about politics. That's the way I saw him at that time. But there were people in government with him who were very political. I think one of them was George Minyala, who served in his government. For one reason or the other, he removed Minyala and sent him back to barracks. So, Minyala, myself, I was then a captain in the armed forces. I've just come back from the Middle East with the troops. I took 5 battalions to the Middle East, 5B, and the notorious 5B. I took them to the Middle East. And the CO then was Lieutenant Colonel Michael Abana, a very good officer. Now, when we came back from the Middle East, exactly 2 weeks after my arrival, I was arrested. I wasn't arrested for nothing. I was arrested because I was planning with Minyala in order to stage a coup.
You were doing the planning whilst you were in the Middle East? Because if it's just 2 weeks after your arrival.
That's a good question. I think the whole thing was in process before I came. George might have done a lot of groundwork with my good old friend Atokwashi, whose name is there. I've known Ato when I was at the age of 15, if not less. He had been some of these Ghana activists. So I came back from the Middle East. Ato invited me. I went to his house and I met George. And of course, as I said, the whole process was already, moving. So Ato mentioned it to me, and George explained to me the need for a change. And I must say one thing. George then was convinced that it is enough with military governments. He has served in one before.
He wanted a return to civilian rule.
He wants a return to civilian rule. That's exactly what I think happened in 1979.
Yes, the Rawlings one.
The Rawlings one, and turned out to be something else. Because George's mind was that if he succeeds, definitely there should be elections.
Were you going to kill Achampong?
No.
Were you going to kill Akufu?
No.
Were you going to kill the SMC top hierarchy?
Not at all.
Were you going to kill anyone who resisted the coup?
Well, that is difficult to answer. But when a soldier moves and you want to stop him.
Did you have financial support from businessmen in Ghana?
No, that I have no idea.
Did you have financial support from external sources?
That I have no idea either. Now,
Were you
mind you,
promised some money?
I was not the leader of the coup.
Were you promised some money as Dr. Nyaho Tamakloe by the leaders of the coup?
No, at all. You see, you have to know those you are working with. My good old friend, Captain Sami Totini, a Sandhurst trade officer, good officer by all standards. But I got him involved, I must say. But I invited him. Then we had also Captain Ayi, another good officer. In those days, nobody really, you can't use money really to influence an officer so easily.
It wasn't as it is today.
Exactly.
So you got arrested, but the history suggests that around the same time, the legendary security couple, Captain Kojo Chikata, was also arrested by the Champon government and apparently maltreated in prison. And this was a testimony that Captain Chikata was prepared to share with the National Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Was he connected with your event?
No, Kojo was not connected at all. Now, as I said earlier on, there were a series of coup attempts. So it's very possible Kojo might have been in a different group altogether. But our group was made up of Colonel George Menyela, Captain Totimi, Captain Ayi, and myself. These were the 4 military men really involved. I think the key civilian was J. Atokwashi.
Okay. So Francis Poku, whom we know about as well, became a security, I could say, arguably a very successful security couple for President Kufuor's administration. He was at the time in the security services. Was he connected? Was he working against you? Did you encounter him?
No, I didn't really meet Francis Poku until I was arrested. I think a couple of days after our arrest, we were interviewed individually. And when I went to one of the interviews, there was this panel and he was the chairman of that particular panel. That was the first time I saw Francis Poku. I have never met him in my life. He was, I remember, very, very soft-spoken and took his time to talk. And after we've been sent to the various detention centers, we stayed there a year plus, and then Achambon was removed by Akufu. And then we stayed in for, I think, about 3 weeks more before we were released. And it was then that I went to him in his office at a special brand, now you call it BNI. And with smiles he received me. And there were certain items that were confiscated then. He handed them over to me. And we have since then become very close to today.
You and Francis Poku?
Oh yeah, to today.
Did you capture his removal of Kufuor's, by Kufuor's administration in your book?
I did.
Did you know about it?
I was then outside the country. I was then an ambassador.
Yes.
But when I followed the whole thing, I was a bit disturbed. And I told myself that somebody has wrongly advised Kufuor. Okay. Because when it came to loyalty, you can't take it from Francis Poku as far as Kufuor is concerned.
Whilst we're still with you in prison, let's talk about the Hearts of Oak event. And then when I read that in your book, I'd never heard about it before, and I don't even know how it was possible for a man who had been arrested for treason, as it would be today, to receive a big club like Hearts of Oak at Nsawan prison simply because he was a Hearts supporter and director. And so the whole Hearts of Oak team went to Nsawan to see you. Can that happen today?
Well, I don't know today, but it happened then. And I think I have to mention a name who did a lot as far as that was concerned, and that is Kwame Pianim.
By bringing hats to the Nsawam?
He was able to organize that while he's in prison. You know, we were in prison together. And then Kwame heard about how I handled the club in those days. And also the Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars. And he was, even though he's a Kotoko fan, he was so much impressed. And he asked me if it's possible for the club to come down to the prison, because he then was in charge of what we call Prison 11.
Oh, I see. A football club.
A football club in Nsawam. So have you been to Nsawam prison?
Yes, I have, so many times.
You know there's a huge football park.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Before you get to the hospital, the chapel is there
That's
as well.
right, that's right. And Kwame Pien was so active. I think he was the chairman of the Prison 11. With a young man who was playing the inside right. And his name is Kontomere. I remember very well. A wonderful striker.
I see.
So Kwame talked to me about this. I said, oh, well, it's possible. Why not? So we got in touch with the authorities in Hearts of Folk. I think by then Omar Abu and others were there. And they went to the prison authorities and asked permission. And they were allowed to come with their bus, the phobia bus.
So
right
was it the first team, the top team? The first
the top
11?
team.
Who were the players?
Shamokwe, Abladekuma, Dogbate, Joado. I mean, the top 11. Those boys that I really brought in.
Senegal.
No, Amas Senegal was not. When I was there, Amas Senegal was not in the team.
Okay.
I mean, the
Nanabenyi Krenzel, the goalkeeper.
Nanabenyi Krenzel, yes.
So these are the Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars that you put together.
Exactly, I put together.
Ah, I see.
So they came to play against Prison.
But they were huge stars at that time.
Oh, they were huge stars then. They're huge stars. With Coach Kobna. May he rest in peace. And what happened? Well, I didn't see the outside of the prison wall, but we heard the shouting at the prison, huge gate. And not knowing, the message went to downtown in Nsawam. The Hearts of Folk is playing a match at prison, with Prison 11 in Nsawam Prison's park. So the people just came in, the youth at that time. And they were banging the gate to be allowed to come in. Of course, naturally they were not allowed.
So what did the players tell you?
I noticed most of them were very sad. Yeah. In fact, they came not just the men alone. One woman was amongst them. This lady who took Kwampian into court.
Rosemary Kwam.
Rosemary Kwam. She was amongst the group that came. No, she's a strong House of Folk.
Yes, I know that.
So they came in, and I realized they felt a bit sorry for me, especially when they were not aware when I was going to be released. And they played, they won.
Of course.
And, and after the match, I had the opportunity to address them. Very interesting. Kwame was there. Kwame brought me a stool, a small stool like that, so I can see them really. And I remember after I finished addressing them, good old Kwesiama, former ambassador.
The old politician.
Old politician. When Kwesiama was a minister, I was a kid. But he was then in Nsawam. So Kwesiama came and said, Nyaho, you are an old Kupanga.
Old Kupanga.
Kupanga. I said, what is the meaning of this? And then he said, I'll tell you later. So one fine morning I went to Aze. So I want to find out the meaning of this old Kupanga. And I said, look, that is what Nkrumah says when he sees a young man who is very sharp.
Oh, I see. Nkrumah, the Osaje for the
Osaje
president.
for himself. I have documented, it's in my book.
Yes, I read Old Kupanga.
Old Kupanga.
I see. You have such a rich connection with Ghana's politics right from way back. And I see you have photographs of relating to Hearts of Folk and football still, GW Amatefu.
Oh, yeah.
You have HP Nyamite.
Yeah.
And these were the big guys who sort of led Hearts of Oak in the 60s and the 70s and the glorious Phobia Fearsome 11 of the late 70s. When you look at the final question on Hearts of Oak, are you proud of what you see today?
No, I'm not proud of what I see today. We are talking about management of the club.
The way the club looks today, from its rich history of the 60s and the 70s, and all of these important personalities that used to work for Hearts of Oak. Because when I look at the list and I look through your book, you will see that the top private sector operators, heads of big corporate institutions, were the same people who were managing and running these clubs, often on their own budgets and their own pockets, and they were able to groom all of these talents with very little resources. Do we see the same thing in management today? Do you see that kind of competent, skillful people in the management of our football today, or has it turned something else, even though there's much more money in football today than there was then?
I think it's all about commitment. Serious commitment to the game.
These guys were committed. Your generation was committed.
Oh no, I mean my generation. When Yemite was in football, I was a kid. HP Yemite, they have been in since the 50s.
And he also led the state insurance company.
Oh yes, oh yes. He brought Stanley Matthews into this country years ago. That was, I think, almost immediately after independence. He brought Stanley Matthews here.
In those days, how did you get to hear about football in England? How did you know Liverpool was doing well? Today we watch it, but those days, how did you know?
By radio.
Which radio?
The normal radio box, the old radio box, you know.
You could hear
Refutation.
football commentary from England?
Oh yes, from Britain.
Oh really?
Oh yes. In those days, they can relay matches being played in Britain to our radio sets here.
In the British League?
In the British League.
So you could hear the
You
commentary?
could hear them.
Oh, I see. So you heard George Best?
George, of course, but George Best was even when I was now a medical student.
I see. I see. So you knew the names of the big players in Europe?
The big players' names were being hammered day in and day. And mind you, they had this weekly, is it Lotto or whatever they do, you know, on football.
On radio?
On radio, in fact, I think they still do it.
Yeah.
They call the teams, both away and home teams, how they fared. And then you use that
to take, and then
you can win.
Football pools.
Football pools, that's what it was. Football pools. I think they still do it.
Yes. So, but you didn't see them on television?
No, there was no television. So how are you going to say it?
But how could you, by listening to the radio, know, for instance, that Seb Obimore was great?
No, well, the newspapers then were very good. Graphic was very good. They had very good journalists.
So the photographs
section,
were in?
The sports section, of course, they bring photographs. That's the best you can see. You follow me. And I think Kofi Bedu did very well.
Yes.
Kofi Bedu did very, very well. He's still around.
He's still around. Yeah. He's working for Asante here.
Kofi Bedu did very, very well because he was a very good sports journalist. And he kept the whole nation abreast with what was happening in Britain. By then it was just Britain. We knew little about any other place.
But you knew about Real Madrid, I mean.
Oh yes.
When I grew up, my father used to talk about Real Madrid.
Yes, Real Madrid came to this country. They played Hearts of Oak.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
In their white strip?
Ago. Yes, in their white strip. Also, there was this club in Dusseldorf, Fortuna Dusseldorf.
Yeah.
They were also here before. And also there was this club.
The time I was growing up, Bayern Munich too was
Munich,
one of the household names.
Yes.
You know, that I picked up.
The Santos from Brazil.
From Brazil, yeah.
They were here with Pele. So you can see at that time.
That's an interesting sort of angle that you give me, because I keep thinking about how these old men got to know about Liverpool and all of that, because they didn't have the technology that we have today. But that's very interesting.
No, but mind you, at that time, radio and telegram was very important. Telegraphic way of sending message.
I see.
So it came quickly. Now you can sit down and then talk to Britain.
So that's the same way you followed politics in Britain as well.
Absolutely.
So Douglas Head, Margaret Thatcher,
oh yes,
all of these things.
BBC World Service, constant. I remember when we were in Standard 3, we were advised to be listening to BBC World Service.
To pick up your language.
Yes, to pick up your language.
So you knew about John F. Kennedy and the assassination of Kennedy.
Absolutely.
Reached Ghana the same day.
By then, even the time of Kennedy, I was a medical student. I was fully grown.
I see.
Yeah.
After the break, we'll get into the politics again, and we would like to talk about election 2012, but we'll hear on Kwame Preku, which is an important part of the political history of this country. It has not been properly documented, except what you have shown to us in this book. But we'll talk about the events that led to that, the events that led to the collapse of the Alliance for Change. And you can tell us today whether you had at the back of your minds to form a political party that will sort of bring the Nkrumahist and the Dankwa-Buziaist together to run the elections of 1996. After the break, we'll get back to politics with Dr. Nyaho Tamakloe on his book, Never Say Die. That's it, is an autobiography of a Ghanaian statesman. Welcome back, and I'm sure that you are making your notes. This is an interview that we have to do again, maybe in part 2, and probably in part 3, if the author will indulge us. But it's turned out to be very interesting. Let's talk politics now. We have 15 minutes to finish this interview. Kwame Preku shook the foundation of this nation. As students, we knew that Rawlings was the alter ego, the big political sort of image. And he was quite popular. And we knew also that the MPP group led by Professor Dubois was against Rawlings, but they appeared like the proto-nationalists. Your group at that time appeared like the proto-nationalists. They didn't appear to have connection with the people on the ground. They didn't appear to have the mobilization capacity of Nkrumah, for instance. They looked like, you know, some educated intellectual elite proto-nationalists who wanted to push their pen and write articles in the newspapers. What's changed all of that image for us young people was the event of Kwame Preku. It was so massive that it sent the nation another image of the NPP, and you were really in the thick of affairs. If you can tell us just briefly before we get into 2012, how did Kwame Preku come about?
Well, it all started, I remember, with the introduction of VAT. By then, things were quite rough economically. And then when VAT was introduced, I think it came, the pressure came from the IMF also. Things became very difficult. That day-to-day living in the country was not really good for the ordinary person. So a few of us got together. And I think I can remember all the names. Charles Reku-Brobe.
You have them here.
Akoto Ampao.
Tony Sheshe.
Yeah, Tony Sheshe.
One of the lawyers in the petition.
That's right. Victor Newman.
V.O. Newman.
Kakramba Cromwell, who was then a very young student for University of Ghana. He just graduated. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And I think myself, we're about...
There's Charles Reku-Brobe.
Yeah, I've mentioned Charles already.
Kwesi Pratt Jr.
Kwesi Pratt Jr. Kwesi Pratt. Kweku Bako. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And the group was such an interesting group because we're made up of CPPs and UPs. Very
Kweku Poku.
Kweku Poku.
Yes.
Kweku Poku.
I'm just looking at it from the photograph you have in the book.
That's right.
You have Kweku Poku, Kwesi Pratt, Kakraba Cromwell, Victor Newman. Then you have Akoto Ampao, Akufo-Addo, Charles Brobe, Kweku Bako, and yourself.
Yes. So now we're about, is it 8 or 9?
About 8, yeah, 9.
9.
Yes.
So we put our heads together and then we started. I must say that we organized principally in Kumasi.
Organization?
Yes.
You traveled to Kumasi to sit and do the organization?
But we wanted the whole thing to be so spontaneous. So even though we didn't visit there often, but we had people there who were working.
So, but the first one was in Accra?
It was in Accra here. The first one was in Accra.
That was massive.
It was a massive demonstration.
Did you anticipate how big it was going to be?
We didn't really. I remember when I got to what they call now, is it Obrasport or whatever they call it?
Yes, Kwame Nkrumah Circle.
The crowd was so thick. Now, Charles Brobe tells us, Nyaho, I got to that place, myself, Kwesi Pratt, and Sheshe. So Charles said, you better move and get to the head of the march.
How did you send the information around to the people? There was no Joy FM,
No, there
which was the first private radio station. There was no private radio station. There was only GBC and the state television. And how did you get, because I remember on the morning of the match.
Leaflets.
Or leaflets to trotro stations.
The trotro station, taxi drivers, they did a lot.
I see.
They did a lot in those
Because on the morning of the match, I remember there was a repeated announcement on radio naming yourself and others to report to the police headquarters.
Police station, that's right.
Yes, to the police headquarters
Right.
and have some interaction with the police.
That's right.
Did you oblige that report, that request?
That request after the match we didn't.
No, before, at the beginning.
Before we went.
7 o'clock in the morning it started.
Before we went.
And all of us panicked.
The Greater Accra regional headquarters of the police service. We went there. We met, I can't remember the name of this gentleman now. Mbia. I think Chiefs would be in Mbia or somebody.
And what did he tell you?
Oh, no, he was so friendly. He sat us down, and then we had a chat with him. And then he mapped out, the route for us. And that was that. That was that.
I see.
So we're going strictly by the route given to us by the police. And all of a sudden, when we got to the UTC, the police started shooting. Another group completely.
They were shooting at you?
Oh, yes.
So why did you were in front of the match?
I was at the front of the match. I consider myself lucky to have been alive. So
you saw the bullets coming?
If you are a soldier, you hear the pop where you have to take cover.
So you did take cover?
Of course, I did.
So the demonstration was dispelled?
Yeah, they were dispelled. The crowd was dispersed for a while. But when it was quiet, we all regrouped again.
And so how did Jerry Ope die?
Jerry Ope case is quite interesting. He had come to watch.
He lived in the neighborhood?
Yeah, he lived at Graphic area.
Yeah.
You see, near the government.
He was a 9 year old?
You see?
How old was Jerry Ope? Do you remember?
Oh, 9 years old.
Yes, 9 years old.
9 years old. So he had come to watch, and a straight bullet got to him.
Oh,
that was that.
That's terrible. Anyway, so the demonstration proceeded and ended where and how?
Well, the demonstration proceeded. We marched all the way from, we took the highway, really, and then got to UTC. We continued to Watu, then passed in front of where now you have the car park, and then got on the main high street, and then we continued to this hotel, Novotel Park. So it was at Novotel Park that we had a rally.
The big rally, and it was addressed. Okay, let's fast forward a bit. So later on, was there did you, the leaders of the group, did you get divided? Was there a power struggle between Nana Akufo-Addo, Charles Brobe, yourself, and others? Was there a leadership struggle?
I wouldn't say so.
But what happened?
Well, we came from different traditions.
Yes.
And I think the only concern of the NPP at that time was the fact that we might not turn that group into a political party.
The NPP didn't want that to become a political party?
The leadership of the NPP then.
Which was then Edu Boahi.
Edu Boahi, Aram Ponsan.
Yes.
They were
Odo Isaacs and others.
Odo Isaacs, BJ Darocha. These are the giants of the party at that time.
Yeah, and they didn't want you to metamorphose this group into a political party.
Because all of a sudden we became popular. Okay. And I remember Aram Ponsan came to my house on several occasions. He couldn't meet me. And one time I came home, then my mother told me that your friend had been here again. So I decided to wait for him because he gave a time. And he came, and I assured him that there's no way.
That this will become a political party?
Yeah, not me.
But were there,
he accepted
was there some information festering from among the leadership that this should become a political vehicle to win political power away from J.J. Rawlings?
It wasn't centrally discussed at all as a group. I must assure you.
Were there some elements within your leadership that was
pushing for that?
Some
might probably have had the interest. You follow me?
Who, for instance, could have had that?
It's difficult to say, but as I'm saying, we came from different political traditions. So really to get it as a political group at that time would be very difficult. Because look, Kwesi Pratt, CPP. Kwesi CPP.
Cromwell,
Akoto Ampao, CPP. Cromwell, I wasn't sure. He was very young at that time. Victor Newman, NPP. Nanado, NPP. Myself, NPP. You follow me? Kweku Poku, CPP. I must say, Kweku was CPP inclined. So the CPP elements were more.
Okay. So some of you then continued to back Kwame Pianim in his bid to become president. Some of you from the alliance, principally yourself and Dr. Brobe, became an important part of Kwame Pianim's campaign with Major Kwashiga and others. So was there disquiet in the NPP?
Oh yeah, the party, our party is a democratic party. There were a lot of rallies held, addresses were made, Kwame campaigned length and breadth of the country. But I think where the party wasn't happy was when Kwame went to court. Kwame went to court on two phases. The first one was to test the what do you call it?
His qualification.
His qualification as a leader. And then the second one was when the party wanted to have a congress immediately to elect a leader. So he went to court to stop it. That's right.
Yes.
See? And that was not taken kindly at all by the party. I must say, not even Darocha took it kindly, even though Darocha was then very close to Kwame. You see, so I would say that was really the problem.
Okay, let's come to 2012, and we are skipping a lot because of our time. And we want to answer some critical questions, and in our next interview, we'll do a bit more detail. Your concerns in the book about how Greater Accra region was managed and the way in which the results turned out, do you think that the party shot themselves in the foot from what you've written in your book? Is that what you are saying?
I think we didn't manage the region very well. I believe strongly in that.
How come?
One, there were a lot of differences in the region. Almost any constituency you go to, there's a problem there. And that came as a result of the elections we had before the main election.
The primaries.
The primaries. The primaries created a lot of damage. You have no idea. And some of them were so deep-seated that it was difficult to erase them totally. So it happened almost.
Do you think some personalities sort of shared responsibility? Do you think there was dereliction of duty? Do you think there was poor leadership?
No, I don't think. You see, I will put the blame really on the constituencies.
Themselves?
Themselves.
The leaders at the constituencies?
The leaders at the constituencies. Because there were a lot of instances that if they have taken their time, we would have been able to know the right person to head the constituency.
Do you blame Akufo-Addo for that?
I will not blame Akufo-Addo for that. I will not. I will not at all. But once again, I'll say the constituency leadership.
Do you blame the national chairman?
I'll give you a classic example of Ododo. When Odoe has vetted the candidates and said, look, this one is not good, he won't go. The constituency executives push his name up.
Odoe Sykes, the chairman of the vetting committee,
at the blind side of Odoe,
vets candidates and says this person is not qualified.
At the constituency level. No,
yes.
Odoe is so identified to that particular
yes, very well.
So he says, look, this chap, he doesn't believe that he definitely will be a good candidate for the constituency. And yet they did it at his blind side.
Surreptitiously.
The person was pushed and we lost. That's a classic example.
And you lost massively.
Massively too. We lost never in the history of our party have we gone that low at that constituency. So we had similar examples also.
So do you think, and I'm not inviting you to sort of make pronouncements that is in the bosom of judges, but are you excited and expectant of Nana Akufo-Addo's petition before the Supreme Court?
We're in court. You follow me? As you have stated yourself, definitely, I'm not a lawyer to begin with. So what is happening really, my knowledge is so minimal. Now, the final decision has to be given by the judges. So that's what.
Are you relishing something significant in favor of the petitioners?
No, naturally, if if what do you call it? If the case goes our way, I'll be very happy. There's no doubt about that. You follow me? But as I said, such Supreme Court cases it will be left to the judges to decide.
In our next interview, we'll talk about the other aspects of the book and get more into your family. I'm sure you give us another 1 hour sometime very soon. And as the comments come, we'll gather them and then bring them to you for your comments. Thank you very much, Dr. Nyaho Tamakloe. It's a pleasure talking to you. And thank you, viewers. I'm sure you have enjoyed it. We've promised you a part 2. It will certainly come. Bye-bye.